Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Environmental Coffee House. Hi, Eliot. It's
Hi.
great to have you, Eliot Jacobson, my guest, Professor Eliot Jacobson, and I am Sandy Shellis, your host. And the chat is really filling up. Kim is here and she's moderating, and there's just a lot of wonderful people, Trulia and Thomas and David and Veg and Astrologer and Rollins. So everybody's with us. So we're going to get started. How have you been?
I've been good. It's been busy times. Just celebrated my 25th wedding anniversary on Sunday, and kind of
Wow.
exhausting, but yeah, 25 years. So we're
Congratulations.
thank you. I like that the masses of crowds are applauding. So my
Yeah,
wife, my wife is spectacular. So anyway, yeah, just sort of getting back into the swing of things after all the planning that went into that, but doing well.
that's great. Well, I'm glad that you could make it after all that because I know it was my birthday and I had two parties. Last weekend and this weekend, I've been away 2 weekends in a row. And oh my gosh, it's been, yeah, I have to catch up. I'm too old for this shit. Quite frankly. But all right, well, we have a pretty good busy show tonight. We're going to go over some science. We're going to talk about some of your graphs, and then we're going to segue into Earth Day. And because Earth Day was yesterday, and since Earth Day was yesterday, we have some commentary. So,
Yes.
what would you like to start with?
And why don't you just throw up some graphs and let's just look at where we are right now so that when we're talking about Earth Day, we can talk about what a dismal failure it has been for over 50
Oh
years.
my God, I
I
know,
mean,
right?
you know,
All right, let's see. Let's see. Hang on, I'll throw up a few grades. All right, so which one? I'll start with this. This is the flag. That's my house. My rayon horrible ecology flag from 1970, but I couldn't find it. People put me down because I couldn't find it in. I was looking for it in bamboo, but what? Or sub temp. I mean, all right. Why don't we start with this one?
well, that's kind of the most complicated out of all of them. But
Oh, do you
you
want me
know,
to start with a
no, it's
different
fine.
one?
I love it. I love it. They can take it. Your
They can
audience can
take it. They can take it.
so here's the thing, like people wonder how fast CO2 is growing in the atmosphere. And it's one thing to say, oh, we've gained 5 parts per million a year or 6 or 3 or whatever, how much we're gaining each year. And it's another thing to sort of track those gains over time. Like, are we gaining more per year now than we used to or less per year now than we used to? And so this graph tells you kind of how much CO2. Well, I do it every 3 years because you get a
Okay.
nice smoother graph doing it over 3 years. So this is sort of this is how much CO2 we're accumulating in the atmosphere, sort of average 3 years at a time. And you notice that the general trend will be up. People always ask about that dip in the middle. Believe it or not, that's Mount Pinatubo. That was the impact of that volcanic explosion, which
Wow.
completely screwed the atmosphere for several years. But what I want to do is take you to the far right where you see that gradual downslope, right?
Okay. Which I
And what
don't
is
know if my pointer is going to work. So look at the far
well,
right, guys.
far right, right at the top, and then it goes down a little bit. So that means that it doesn't mean that CO2 in the atmosphere is going down. What
Mm-hmm.
it means is that the rate of increase
All
is
right.
slowing down. Now, what does net zero mean? Net zero means that we're no longer increasing, right? So net zero is that line at the bottom that's in orange.
Mm-hmm.
So where we have to get to net zero is to have that little bit of a downturn that you see right there at the end continue that way for the next 50 years. In fact, I've tracked that forward. And at the present rate, that little downturn, if we keep going on we're going to get to net zero in about the year 2084.
Oh, nice.
So that's but here's the
Yeah.
thing, like all of these people who believe we're making progress, they all rely on that downturn that you can visually see there and say that is proof that the green transition to renewables is working, right?
Mm-hmm.
and,
Right.
and Housefather actually said that the transition started in 2019. You could really see evidence, and that's exactly where that little high point is. It's
I
back in
see it.
2019.
Yep.
So So this is actually the graph that the hopium people out there are using to claim that we're going to get to net zero. That little bit of a downturn you saw there at the top right is what they're hanging their hats on. So yeah, kind of the most complicated one to get started, but in many ways also the most important.
Okay, well, basically, we have a pretty sophisticated chat. And for those who have questions, put two Q's in front of your question because, of course, this is going to be interactive as we like to do. What would you like me to go to next?
Let's just like survey the planet, global temperature, sea.
All right, let's go to that. I had to fix something. Sorry. Let's go to global temperature. Okay.
Okay, so this graph, I put this up. I track every single day. I go to the database that the Europeans put out, the
Yeah.
Copernicus people, and I grab their latest daily data, and I track the all sorts of things: daily temperature, monthly, 180 days, 365 days, and we just passed on April 17th. We just passed a 365 day, that's 1 year running mean
Oh my
of
gosh.
1.6 Celsius. Now, the Paris limit's 1.5
Right.
Celsius. So what this means is that for the entirety of the last year, if you sort of average the amount, we've been above the baseline, it's been 1.6. It's stunning to me. It's hard to believe that this is not like the top of the news. It's just slightly more important than Trump, having
Yeah.
sex with a prostitute,
Yeah.
right? Uh,
Right. Or
so,
it's seriously, I understand that, but this is a beautiful graph, even though, it is an anomaly and it does show how
oh,
screwed up everything is.
yeah. So, when are we going to break 1.5 officially, the Paris limit? Well, that's the huge debate, and the people don't understand what 1.5 means at all. So we're back on the previous one. Okay, there you go. So,
Sorry.
so this idea of what does one breaking 1.5 C even mean is got people totally confused when we're at 1.6 already. But anyway, I just it's important to realize just how hot it is right now on planet Earth.
It is very hot on planet Earth. And what about we're going to look at you want to look at the SSTs?
Yes,
All
let's
right,
throw
let's
it to
let's
surface
throw that
temperature.
up.
So,
All
so
right.
this is another absolutely crazy graph. So what we do is we look at sort of the average of all the ocean temperatures over the entire planet from 60 south to 60 north. So what we're essentially doing is excluding the north and south pole from these averages because there's some ice there and it's not always open ocean and you don't get a fair sort of geographical region year round to measure over. So what we see horizontally is each blue line horizontally represents 1 year. And so we can track the temperatures for a single year from left to right by
Mm-hmm.
following one blue line. Now, the orange line up at the top, that was last year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where everybody's, this was making last June, right? This is when this graph like went viral. Greta retweeted this. And, this thing was just crazy. People were freaked out about it, right? So somewhere around the middle of the graph last year is where people were starting to freak out. And this year we're just blowing it away. And there's a couple things to notice about that red line. The typical peak day, like the day that is the typically hottest day of the year for global sea surface temperatures, is March 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are at the end of April, and we're still peaking, right? We are still at these. The thing is flatlined. It's virtually
It's
flatlined in record
frightening.
territory. It is not going down. And I look at that every day. I open up this data first thing in the morning, and I just cannot believe that this has not started to go down yet. That I thought with El Nino ending,
Right.
which for all intents it already has, with Saharan dust blowing over parts of the ocean, which it
Yeah.
didn't do last year. Care of Michael Mann, with La Nina on the horizon, with
We thought. We
we just
thought.
yeah.
Everybody assumed, and well, not everybody assumed. I mean, most mainstream scientists assumed that La Nina would have an effect, and look at that. You
Well,
know,
I think it still will, and if it doesn't, it's going to really.
it's
And
frightening.
Gavin Schmidt was the first one to say this, right? He's saying,
Hmm.
this stuff doesn't normalize by August, we are in a completely different planet than any that we've analyzed or are ready to know anything about climatologically, right? So if this does not normalize by August, now we're expecting La Nina to sort of kick in full force by late June, early
Right.
July. So
Right.
it's kind of an August deadline for this complete craziness if it doesn't normalize. And by normalize, I just mean the red line going below the orange line. Uh, yeah, we won't know what's going on. I mean, we can officially say we have no idea. We are clueless if this red line stays above the orange line through
Well,
August.
I think then if that is the case, we'll be doing quite a lot of shows on empathy and collapse acceptance and
Yeah.
living with what we are looking at in a realistic manner and not being taken in by the zoo that is, at least in our country, the American political system, and
Yeah.
that's the
It's
front
brutal.
page news of the witness whose name happened to be what, Pecker.
Yeah.
That was the big news of the day.
Yeah,
Okay.
unfortunately, I don't watch. I have to tell you, I do not watch political news. I go out of my way to not watch it. And just while I'm scanning for climate articles, I catch enough headlines to feel like I know
There you go.
everything I need to know.
Yeah, there's only one podcaster I do watch. His name is David Feldman. I do like him. He's the only one. I can get everything from him. I know what's going on. That's it. In the morning, coffee, doing chores. Then I'm done. Because, like you, I'm on Twitter, which is a little bit too much, but I'm learning and I'm getting my ideas and I'm learning about what's happening. And of course, everything that you put up, Elliot, is like being in class and learning. And we are all grateful. Let me just tell you that. We are all grateful for you, for you coming into our lives. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if people really understand, but I do these daily moments of doom, right? Which
yep.
sometimes get more hits than other days. But I am always looking for the story that it has global context. It's not something that's
Hmm.
happening, to one part of the world
Right.
because there's disaster news every day that I could put up there, right? But it's something with global context, like the dying of the oceans, or the just so I will typically um, go to my data websites at about 4 a.m. to 4:30 and put all the data into the spreadsheets and see whether anything
Wow.
makes me go crazy. And then I start looking for these articles, right? And sometimes I find them in 5 minutes, and sometimes it takes me an hour and a half. It's 6 a.m. before I've posted that thing. So it is sort of my way of staying like right on the edge of what's happening today. Also, it's not so much about the story I post, but it's also my own education, my own way of staying current.
That's
So
good.
yeah.
It's good for us, and people like to say, well, why are you on that? Why are you on Twitter X or whatever? It's horrible. It's hideous. I say, no, because I'm not. I'm following who I want. I'm following the climate scientists and the so-called doomosphere, but I mean, I'm the realists, the people who know what's happening. And once you do that, you can really weed out the rest. You don't have to necessarily get all that garbage in your feed because at least I don't, and then of course we talk about the trolls. You block those obnoxious people that don't have anything to add to the conversation because there are many of those.
Well, you could notice if you ever look through my threads that there might be a troll post there that lasts an hour or two, but I just go through them over and over and over again, weeding that stuff out because the people who come to my threads, I want them to have an experience that's positive for them. That they're actually seeing intelligent people have the conversation, and they're not having to work through porn stuff and
Yeah, which
you
is
know
link in bio, and then you see some ass sticking up in the air. I cannot believe this happens, but very rarely to me. Only just started happening a little bit, so I'm grateful for that. And of course, everybody shares to all of a lot of us are still on Facebook, and we have a Facebook page, and they share your tweets in the groups. So you're very well known, and people, again, I'm saying, learn from you. We already have a couple of questions, Elliot. I think I'm going to put them up because they pertain to the last graph. Uh, Rollin switch. Why just say high ocean surface temperature when it is a massive kill measure for sea life of all types? Just a temperature measurement has little impact on people.
I'm not trying to have impact on people. I'm just putting out data that is meaningful to me personally. I don't have an agenda to try and save the planet through putting this information out or inspire action. This is the information I put out, and I would say if that poster thinks there should be other information, then
Then
that's what they
he,
should put
well,
out.
that's he does. I know him personally. He does. He's very interested in the natural world, so he does do that.
I get that kind of question a lot, and my answer is always the same. If you think there's something that should be there that I didn't do, I mean, here's my data
Yeah.
source. Go for it.
Yeah. Awesome.
And
Awesome.
once in a while, they actually do it, and I appreciate that.
Tommyist, how much of that graph's downturn was a result of the pandemic? Because some of the data points from 2019 now include the downturn, and I'm thinking that was that the CO2 or the global temperature graph?
That's the CO2, which went down 7%
Yeah, this one.
in the year 2020.
Okay.
But, it went back up in 21 and 22, and we had record high,
Yep.
CO2
I see it.
emissions in 2023. So that's good. That's a very interesting question, and you can actually sort of, if you use a microscope, you can really see the impact. But the truth is that decline started in 2019, so it happened in advance of the pandemic. So I think that that's a really important point, and we will see after the pandemic sort of escapes the 3-year window, which it should by the end of this year, right? Because 2020, so 21, 22, yeah.
Yeah.
So at the end of this year, we should really be out of any impact of that on the 3-year averages, and we'll see. If that curve stops going down, which, by the way, I expect it to stop going down. I think the climate scientists are, overly optimistic here. But if it does stop going down, then that essentially is the end of net zero. At least the hyperbole that goes on, the exaggerations, the sort of the we're making progress type of line that people are giving us. That's the end of that.
And then we make our plans, and we have to live accordingly. And that's where our again we'll segue over there. But I have a little one I wanted to put up. That's
Yeah.
yours.
Yeah, no, this is mine. This just
Yeah.
use one of these standard memes. I mean, usually you see this with the economy,
Yeah.
but but right now the economy doesn't seem to be the main issue. It's the southern border, it's immigrants. They're coming across the border. What are we going to do about all these immigrants? It's another one of these sort of distraction stories. It's not really a story with content, and the real point is that as climate change accelerates, as collapse accelerates, we're going to have more and more
More
people
and
trying
more.
to cross borders. So what we're seeing now is very small compared to what's coming, right? This comet, this asteroid that's hitting us, has a lot of things in it. Immigration is one, pandemics is another. Collapse of economy, starvation, heat waves, right? All of these
A
things, sea level
list.
rise, are different parts of this asteroid, right? And so
Yes.
that we just point to one thing, immigration, and say, oh my God, immigration, what have the Democrats done? They're so bad. We should build a wall. Yeah, build a wall to stop an asteroid, right? So,
Yeah,
it,
it'll
it
only stop all the animals from migrating.
yeah, it's horrible what it's done
I
to
just
to.
had that argument with somebody the other day who calls themselves a progressive or whatever that I was like, okay, well, the wall is a hideous, horrible mess. And you have to look at why are people coming, not just that they're coming, why, what's happening in their countries, but that doesn't get spoken about very often.
It really is not part of the story, nor where they're coming from. We always just assume they're from South America somewhere, but they're coming from all over the world,
All
right?
over.
And this is just the one of the ways they've been told they can get in, and I don't know this. I'm completely anti-border. I think we live on a planet that, if you view it from space, doesn't have any fences or borders, right?
Right.
The whole Earth Day idea is that this planet is a planet, and that actually goes back to, like, King Arthur had that. I mean, I remember that idea from Camelot, that you don't have all the lords with their own little this is my fiefdom. You have one country, you have one planet. So it's just crazy to me that we have any restrictions whatsoever on immigrations. I mean, the Statue of Liberty, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you look at what it says on the Statue of Liberty, it's like, look, and it includes the word tempest, right? Like if the
Yes.
weather is bad, we
Oh,
want
I just went to Canada this weekend, and yep, we had to go through the border, and it was easy for us, but it was still, we had to go through the whole thing, and it's a big whatever. But that's never going to change. You know that. It's not going to change. No matter how we feel and what we understand, it's not going to change. It's not the nature of the beast. They want, all these countries want to tighten things even more against what they perceive are threats. They don't look like us. You know, in the United States, we're so screwed. It doesn't, I mean, it's overwhelming. But let me find my little one. Oh, here it was. Here it was. Remember, climate change is a hope, but Noah's magic zoo boat is undeniable.
yeah.
I thought that was really cute.
Yeah, as is a guy who came back to life after being dead for 3 days.
Yeah,
Yeah,
actually, right. And we just, that's a whole other issue. But it's not just our country, you know, with the whole religiosity. And
yeah,
I'm an equal opportunity basher of, but Orthodox religions, not necessarily just the people that are spiritual or celebrate something that they feel and they're the goodness of them, like one of our followers, Gary Hoover. I read Jared Brock. He's a Christian, but he's a doomer, and he writes Last Week in Collapse, and I do him every week because it's well done. It's the orthodoxy, the people that prevent women from having control over their own bodies in any country, in any, you know, place. All of those religions just put their feet on women. How are we ever going to fix a population of 8 billion when women have no control over themselves? That is a big conundrum.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, if there are no more pictures to put up, we could start. I
Do
don't know
we
if there's
have,
any.
did you send me an energy one?
I did not send you an Earth
Then
energy
we won't,
imbalance.
okay, we won't put it up. I think I
I've been
had one.
waiting for. I've been waiting every day for the data. I actually have it
Okay.
in my calendar that typically that data comes out on the 18th of each month,
Okay.
and but you know they put it out when they do. So we're overdue for an update on the Earth energy imbalance, which is currently at about 13 Hiroshimas per second. You know, so it's crazy,
Oh boy.
crazy.
Yeah, it is a bit crazy. Well, we can segue over then to Earth Day. And I think with the Earth Day conversation will come the empathy and the feeling and what we need to do for each other, which is something that we talk about. I had Karen Perry on 2 Fridays ago, and it was a collapse acceptance show, which was very, very well received because she's out there explaining that we have to be in acceptance so we're not in shock and we have community and support. And maybe, you know, extrapolate those ideas to all different kinds of communities, not just us. It was very interesting because she had mentioned that, you know, people were saying, well, it seems so privileged to be in this position. And she said, I am talking to the privileged people. They have to change. Everyone is going to have to be on the same playing field if the
Well,
shit hits the fan.
yeah. So
If that could be hopium also.
I mean the saying sort of goes, you know, we're all going to face a crisis one way or another. We could
Right.
either face the crisis that we expect, or the face the crisis we that gets us by surprise, right?
Mm.
So yeah, it's coming either way, no matter what our opinion is about it. So, um, but yeah, let me just. I could just, I don't know if you have a slide or something you wanted to put up
I
about it.
do.
I'm going to start talking, you know,
You
randomly.
talk, I can set up the Earth Day, the documentation you sent that I thought was really well done and it'll
Oh,
help.
okay.
Yeah, why not?
Um,
Why don't we
Yeah,
do that?
I'm gonna sort of talk. I'm gonna skip around through it.
That's fine. I have it and I'll
So you know, this is sort of something that's been very much on my mind. I've almost written a couple of articles about this, and I just couldn't pull the string. And this might be the thing that gets me to write the article. But the idea is that when I was growing up, and I live in California growing up, it felt like the environmental movement was everywhere, right? So when I was growing up in the San Fernando Valley as
Mm-hmm.
a young boy, I lived right in the middle of the valley. There's mountains on both sides, 2 to 5 miles away. And almost all year round, I could not see those mountains. Back in the day, there was this word smog, which we almost never hear about anymore. But back then, the smog would come in and it
Yeah.
would block out the mountains by 10 or 11 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Your lungs would start to hurt. Your eyes would be red. You wouldn't be able to take a deep breath. And day after day, month after month, year in and year out, that was the reality we lived in the Los Angeles area. Other places like Denver apparently was number 2 in the country
Wow.
for smog back then, which is
Denver.
really surprising. But the whole environmental movement, right? If you really think like what started the environmental movement, had to be Silent Spring. Rachel
Absolutely.
Carson's book.
Mm-hmm.
The look, this stuff we're putting out into the environment is killing things, right? Right? It's like, look, these eggshells are falling apart. They're not strong enough anymore, right? And Agent Orange is this plant defoliant. Look what it's doing to the health of people. So, that was in some respects the start. And people might think that when she put out that information in 1962 on DDT, that was like, oh yeah, we should stop doing DDT, right? We should get it out. But
Mm-hmm.
believe it or not, it actually took 10 years. It was not until
No.
1972 that DDT was outlawed, right? In this country. And
Yeah.
I mean, still used around the world, and there's probably still places it's still being used, but it was outlawed. It took 10 years, and it's just interesting to think about what happened in those 10 years, right? From Carson's book to the time DDT was outlawed. And we had, of course, the Vietnam War. We had multiple assassinations, 2 Kennedys and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, right? We had the
Yes, we did.
draft. People have not experienced the draft. We had women's rights movement, right? The
So
amendment,
much.
right? We had gay rights going on at the time. We had the anti-nuke movement. We had the hippies, take whatever LSD and drop out from society, right? And in the middle of this, right, we sort of right in the middle of this, it's sort of the peak moment. We got in 1968 this photograph from Apollo 8, right,
Yes,
of
I remember.
right there the Earth rise, right, from
Yeah, I remember.
the
Look
moon,
at
right,
that.
and so
Look at that.
so all of a sudden, like all of these battles, these wars that are going on, these feelings, it's our country and their country, and it was sort of like this moment that inspired people environmentally. And the next key thing, believe it or not, happened right here in Santa Barbara, right? We had at the time what was the largest oil spill in history, right? That was the Santa Barbara oil spill. I live in Santa Barbara. We
Mm-hmm.
have, all of these offshore oil platforms. And there was just a blowout in the
I
entire,
remember it. I lived
yeah,
up in Marin County and I was a child, but I remember it because my parents were upset.
yeah. So, we had this huge oil spill, right? And of course, the Exxon Valdez and the Deepwater Horizon and whatever have kind of, worse now than that was. But at the
Yeah.
time, that was it, right? I mean, so there was this sort of feeling like the environment. I mean, we had rivers on fire and entire lakes of fish that were dying, and just the smog I was breathing, and everywhere you looked, there was just so much environmental degradation all happening at the same time. You just could not ignore it anymore, right?
Nope.
It was just, I mean, it was in your face how bad it was, right?
Very bad.
And so they finally got it together and created this event April 22nd of 1970. And
Mm-hmm.
the date April 22nd is kind of an interesting choice because of course that's a random day. There's nothing
Yeah.
special. So originally they thought they would have it on March 21st on the equinox, and there was a competing celebration that same year to have it on the 21st. But they actually had two events, one smaller, and they ended up combining them in years that followed. But April 22nd was chosen because it was after Easter, so there was no question that it would conflict with Easter, and it was before the end of the um, terms for college students. So they wouldn't be in finals week, right? They wouldn't have graduated and gone home. They were sure to be in college somewhere around midterm. And so that allowed more of these kids to come out to the celebration. So, Earth Day started and sort of in its wake over the next couple of years. I mean, we had Richard Nixon as president,
Yes,
right?
we sure did.
1968 until he resigned in when did he resign? 73 or 74?
Yeah. So I thought, oh, was it 72? I don't
Uh,
know. My
I
years
know
doesn't
72
matter.
was
It
the
was,
election year. I think it was
yeah.
70.
Oh, it
Somebody
was
will say,
right
I think
after that. Yeah.
73 or 74.
Yeah.
But, that period from 1970 until Nixon resigned, we pretty much got, every major environmental law this country has ever passed of huge, huge significance, right? Happened during the Nixon term. And then when Ford was his vice, president right after that, who became president. So, I mean, let me just list some of these things. All right. We
Mm-hmm.
had the official formation of NOAA, right? The ocean and atmospheric people. We had the formation of the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. That happened December 2nd, 1970. We had the Clean Air Act of 1970, December 31st. We had lead-based paint restrictions that happened in 1971. We had the ban of DDT in 1972. We had Limits to Growth was published, right, in
Yeah.
1972, right?
Yeah.
We had the
And
ocean. Let me finish my rant, all right?
yeah, go ahead.
We had the Clean Water Act, right, in 1972, the Ocean Dumping Act. Believe it or not, we had Roe versus Wade in 1973 with Nixon as president. We had the Safe Drinking Water Act in 1974, the Toxic Substances Control Act of
Oof.
1976. And we actually started phasing out chlorofluorocarbons, right, the CFCs, before the Montreal Protocol in 1978. We already knew that they damaged the ozone. So that was the 1970s. And I've actually omitted a bunch of stuff from that list, right? But oh my God, what we accomplished during that decade. And one of the really
The
weird,
population bomb.
right, one of the really, yes, thank you. Yes,
Sam.
absolutely. One of the really amazing
Oh,
coincidences that happened is that that's when the Great Acceleration started. You can look up what the
yes.
Great Acceleration is
Mm-hmm.
on Wikipedia, but that's when global industrial civilization
Like,
really took off, right? And that's when everything you look. It doesn't matter what thing you're measuring industrially, right? That is when everything took off. CO2 levels, temperature started spiking. Methane started spiking. Everything is like the great acceleration, and there's like 8 or 10 things that go into that pie. And so there, in some sense, all of these environmental laws that we created that protected humanity, right? That protected society, that made it possible
yes.
for me to go outside and be able to breathe, right? Inspired the growth of industrial civilization, inspired population for Sam out there, right? Inspired, this
Yeah.
this huge spike in everything, and it kind of leads you thinking, like there's this paradox that environmentalism, in healing the planet,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Starting.
make, makes room for more growth, right? It
Oh,
allows
you mean
growth.
like, yes, just like Jevons paradox in a way?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
it is its own form of John's paradox,
yeah.
right? But all of these things that we did, our generation did, kind of helped all this chaos that's followed on the planet be even possible, right? It would not have been possible. You can make a strong argument that the world would not exist today, right,
Yeah,
in any form
yeah.
whatsoever, but for that,
Good
but for
point.
that decade right there. So
I
anyway, that's
remember it.
that's that's my little rant,
It was
rant
a
kind of history
it's a great
perspective on.
rant. It's a great rant. What are you kidding? I remember these things because I was in grade school learning them. So it was an incredible time. And a lot of us out in the chat are similar age, and then there are younger people who are with us, which I am very grateful for because we have the opportunity to impart wisdom and teach them about these things. So thanks, Elliot,
Well,
for that.
it's a weird thing because you don't, on the one hand, you want to say, our generation did all these things. Um, and you want to say, well, but what didn't we do? Well, we did everything we can. And I think every generation is faced with the same thing, right?
Hmm.
We were facing tremendous political pressures and social pressures, and everybody hated the environmentalists and, the tree huggers,
Yeah,
and
yeah, that
they hated them,
tree
right?
hugger. Oh my God. I was,
But Nixon helped us get this stuff done. I
yeah,
cannot believe I'm saying, this despicable, the only president who ever left in, disgrace and resigned from
right.
office, signed every environment. And, by the time Reagan came along, he wouldn't
Yeah.
even admit the existence of acid rain, right? Every Republican since Nixon and Ford has just been a total environmental idiot, right? You look at what Trump did to environmental laws. He just went backwards just as fast as he could in his 4 years, right?
Oh, yes, we were chronicling that on the channel. It's been a very stressful time to be alive, watching
Yeah.
all of the gains, all of these wonderful things that were done to go backwards, and now it's going backwards exponentially, especially for women's rights.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Roe versus Wade was, the Dobbs decision. I mean, yeah, for example, right, going backwards. I mean, it's crazy that
Yeah.
we live in these times. And what's the weirdest paradox of all is that the people who got this done, right, when we were growing up,
Mm-hmm.
are maybe our seniors by 5, 10, 15 years, I would say, because we were
Right.
young, they were in their 20s and early 30s. All
Right.
right. Those are the same people, rabid Trump supporters, the most rabid
Yeah.
Trump, right?
Jeez,
I mean,
Elliot.
that's the paradox for me. How could these people go from being instrumental in getting, all these major accomplishments to being complete idiots now? I just don't
Well,
get
the
it.
ones that are, yeah. Okay.
I apologize in advance to all the Trump voters in your
Oh,
audience.
there's just so many Trump voters in this audience.
It's just
No,
alienated every
listen,
single one of
we're
them.
going to flush them down.
Okay.
There. Any Trump voter in the audience, you get a flush of the day. That's the environmental coffee house flush of the day. You have been here with us enough to know something gets flushed.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
That's
something
true.
definitely gets flushed. So let's see what's going on. That the Dem John says the Democratic Party forced Nixon
Um,
somewhat, but he really he had
I mean,
conservationists.
yes, maybe I don't know my history well enough to know who was forcing what,
No, you do.
but you can certainly veto if you're president. You have a veto power, so he did not exercise his veto.
Poppy says we've ignored every warning, all of those things that you listed, and we've ignored them after that. Just like what happened with Jennifer and I were talking about a climate scientist named Dr. Reck. She just recently died at 92. She was with GM for 27 years, and in the 60s, she warned the top brass that CO2 was bad. That car emissions were going to cause a spike and heating of the earth, and that the company should rethink what they were doing, and they ignored her. They dismissive of her. They summarily pretty much just treated her like she was a non-entity. So she left after 27 years, but it happened, and try people did try.
Mhm. So, can we talk about like what's happened to Earth Day, what it is now?
Yes, we
Because it is
can.
totally infuriating to me. It is. I I honestly, I despise Earth Day now. I despise what it's become. During the 1970s, I went to one Earth Day in the 70s. I went to Earth Day in 1977. I would have been 19 at the time, and I went to Earth Day at UC Davis, and I saw Timothy Leary speak. He was like their keynote speaker,
Did
and
you?
he was talking. He was the one who was really interested in getting his um, body parts after he died sent out into outer space.
I
You
remember
know,
this. Yeah.
yeah. So he was that was the whole talk was about how we were going to evolve as a species so that we could do interplanetary sort of exploration. So yeah, I think those were. Um, I think he took a lot of LSD. That's all I gotta say.
Oh, we know he took a lot of LSD.
Yeah. So anyway, that so I went to Earth Day, and I went to Earth Days off and on throughout the years, but I've been going to the Santa Barbara Earth Day every year for many years, and just growing increasingly uh, agitated every time I go there. And this year, I'm going to have an extreme level of agitation. Um, so I sent you the website for our Earth Day. Could you throw
It's
that up
up.
there?
It's there.
I want to point right up there on the upper left where it says Earth Day. Above Earth Day are the words Community Environmental Council. So it is, our local environmental groups sponsoring Earth Day. So this is sort of like the Exxon Mobil, baseball stadium. This is the Community Environmental Council Earth Day.
Hmm.
And that is sort of like the beginning of what totally irritates me about this. you know, I wrote an essay that is on my website, climatecasino.net, called Can I use swear words on your show? I don't know.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
The title of the essay is There Aren't Enough Fucks in My Vocabulary. Right. And here's
Mine
what the
neither.
article,
Yeah.
so that's the title of the essay. I would love it if people would read and comment on that essay. So what happened is I was reading something in our local newspaper where they out of the blue said this statistic that actually Santa Barbara County, and I think it was really Ventura, just to the south of us, was the fastest warming county in the country. Right? They just said this,
Wow.
right? And I was like, no.
Mm.
So I went to their data source, and I found their data source, which they quoted, and it was a Washington Post article from 5 years ago. And that Washington Post article
Oh
used
my
data
God.
from a certain website. So I went to the website and I got the data. And it turned out that not only were we not the fastest warming county in the country, we weren't even the fastest warming county in the state of California, and we
Oh
weren't even
boy.
the fastest warming county on the coast of California. We were like 180th or something. I have
Right.
the data in my post, but so I wrote an email to her and I said, your data is not correct. You made this claim and it's not correct, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't get any response.
Nothing.
And so um, I then saw the exact same claim in fundraising information that they sent out about a month later, right?
Oh.
And it struck me that there's a lot of monetary value in not telling the whole truth, right? Not if there was one particular date, and if you start at that date and end at
Yep.
this other date, and between those two dates, you happen to be the warmest in the country, right?
Yeah.
It, it doesn't mean you're currently the warmest, or
Right.
or in any other reasonable sense you're the warmest. It just means you can cherry pick 2 days that you
Sure.
were.
But it's a
And so
great
they
fundraising. Right. They're
they were
fundraising off
using
manipulation.
this cherry pick data to be able to essentially tell a half truth or a quarter truth to their fundraising audience. And so I wrote to them again and said, I don't ever want to see this again. And, at that point, I decided my best option was to write this article and to just say, look, next time you do this, I'm going to send this article to our local newspaper and make sure that they, call you out for this. Or
I'll
I'm going
have
to
to
write a
show
letter
your.
to the paper.
Maybe I
Um,
can clip it up too. Your climate casino net.
Yeah, climatecasino.net is the article is, it's have to scroll down a page or so. But yeah, there aren't enough fucks in my vocabulary. But so they are running this thing, and this has become a total capitalist money grab now.
Yep.
And the everybody is selling their stuff, right? You have to buy the organic grocery bag to go shopping with, and you have to get the right backpack and the right shoes and the right clothing. You have to get the right vegan, protein powder, and on and on. It's all about buying stuff, right?
Isn't it?
It's all about capitalism, right? Keep going down, keep going down. There it is. There aren't enough fucks in my vocabulary.
That's fine.
So I hope people will read that because I tried being a nice guy with these people, but so they are sponsoring this thing, and it has the largest EV electric vehicle sort of showcase in the state of California. They
Mm-hmm.
just showcase every EV maker, and you're allowed to test drive them, right? So
Okay.
it's all about selling stuff. It's all
Sure.
about the bright green lie that somehow through buying the right products we're going to save the world, right? By owning the right stuff, by getting even more stuff in your life,
Oh
right? You're
God.
going to somehow save the planet. And
Yeah.
it just I cringe when I walk through that place. I keep on being reminded of Planet of the Humans when the scene when they go to the fair and start interviewing people and asking the real questions. Do you know how many people, child slaves that they had to help mine the minerals for the batteries? So um, so in my mind, right, if I were to put on an Earth Day, you would have
Mm-hmm.
two things. You would
Okay.
have two things and only these two things. You would have free booths, free for all environmental nonprofits, right?
Okay. Yes.
That's number one. Number two, you would have music. I guess there has to be a number three also, food and drink, right?
Mm-hmm.
So food, drink, music, and environmental nonprofits. Selling stuff, absolutely outlawed. You're not allowed to
I like
further
that.
capitalism in any way on Earth Day. Earth Day and capitalism are incompatible, right? Absolutely 100% incompatible.
I'm with
So,
you.
so that's. I don't know why I'm ranting so much
Rant,
today.
it's great. I love it. Do it. It's cathartic. It's
Well,
cathartic. And this is the
anyway,
perfect channel to do it on, Elliot.
any rate, it's
Yeah.
it's just that it's just coming up this weekend. You can see April 27th and 28th. So
Yeah. It's
so
annoying.
I know I'm going to, but there's nothing about this celebration that is going to cause the kind of laws to be enacted
Nope.
and the social change that we saw as a result of the first Earth Day in 1970.
No.
Nothing about this is going to cause that. And that's it's just gotten usurped by the capitalist machine into yet another way to take money from people, including the Community Environmental Council. Helping fund them to do what? I mean, honestly,
Yes.
I have no idea what these people do. I look at their website. I now we have another group in town called the Environmental Defense Fund,
Okay.
and
Oh,
they
the
provide
EDF. That's a big one, isn't it?
free legal assistance, right,
Yeah. Yeah.
to fight oil companies and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Entirely different. So
Entirely
anyway,
different. I was studying them because at one time, Elliot, I was studying all of the big greens to see what their administrative costs were, where the money was going, just like Corey Morningstar had been doing years and years ago. Then I realized she did it. I didn't have to. She really did a comprehensive look at all of those organizations. And it's
yeah.
probably hasn't changed much today.
So yeah, that's what's going on right now, and my world has really been focused on this 25th, and then sort of subsequently getting agitated in advance of Earth Day. So
Let me
you know, I,
ask you, can I ask you a
yeah.
quick question? So
Oh, of
when
course.
when they say something like, well, in 2024 we're aligning with the Earth Day Network's theme of planet versus plastics. The theme calls to advocate for widespread awareness on the health risks of plastics, rapidly phasing out single use plastics, and pushing for a strong UN treaty on plastic pollution by the end of 2024. And I keep thinking that ain't going to happen. I mean,
Well,
I look at it like that. How is that going to happen when every coffee shop you go to has plastic stirrers? I mean, it's just insanity to think that
yeah,
these things are going to
yeah.
happen so quick because of our capitalist market.
Yeah, I mean, what you do is you take whatever is the most current environmental issue in people's consciousness, and you base your theme around that because that'll generate the most money for you, because it triggers people the most.
Yeah,
So yeah,
you're
I mean,
right.
here's an example of what's going to happen. I'm going to walk there, right? I walk there every year. It's about 3 miles each direction from my house,
All right.
but I'll walk there. Some people will bike there, I'm sure, but the
Mhm.
vast majority of people who go to Earth Day are going to drive there. Honestly, I mean, no question about it, right?
Yeah.
So, and they might get their Starbucks with the plastic lid, before they go there. So
All
they,
right.
so yeah, it is. If Earth Day had a history of environmental accomplishments the way 1970s did, right? You can
I s-
honestly tie 1970 and that Earth Day to the legislation from 70 to 74, right? You can just see it. I mean, the environmental consciousness of the country was
it
hitting a
was
peak then.
huge. Right.
I don't think you're going to see plastic legislation come. They want to do some world thing, right? It's probably easier to get the world to agree to something than it is to get the United States to agree to something, right? Because it has no teeth, right? You can invent some worldwide legislation like what they did with fossil fuels, right? In the last COP, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Oh,
we have
yeah.
we have to start to think about considering whether we might want to reduce fossil fuels, right? So if they could claim some, congressional national action on plastics
Mm-hmm.
by the end of 2024, I will completely change my opinion of Earth
Okay.
Day. But I want to see that legislation go through Congress and, you know, get signed by
This
the president.
this Congress?
No, Trump's Congress next year.
Oh yeah, that'll be just happening right away. Yeah.
So this is
Okay,
Trump
Elliot.
putting a free porn star in every garage. That's going to be Trump's, rather
God.
than a chicken in every pot, right?
Oh. It's kind
So
of sad,
anyway,
isn't it? It is kind of crazy. But to expound on that a little bit, do you think that any of these companies that are all right, I'll go back to COP, Council of the Parties, big trade show, right? It's a big trade fair. And a lot of companies are there showing their wares. And I mean, there's things now, and it's consumerism because I have to purchase it. I have cats. So it's all this, sustainable cat litter, compostable cat litter, this and that. I- I- Is it going to help?
so if you were replacing things that are consumable, right, with things that are better for the environment and also consumable,
Mm-hmm.
that's different than saying, "Oh, I really like that pair of pants. Let me buy a
Right.
pair of pants," right?
Right.
So I think those are subtle but important distinctions. So
Okay.
anything that's consumable that you can replace with something that does less damage is of course going to be a good choice to make. But as far as like clothing goes, you should wear your clothing till it's rags, right? You should use everything you have until it's falling apart. And I just think that the idea that we can sell a bunch of stuff dates back to sort of this whole paradigm of the Lehman Brothers, right? This whole
Mm-hmm.
paradigm of let me give you credit, right? So you can
Oh,
buy more stuff. Let
yeah.
me let me inspire consumerism, not with things you need, but with things you want, right? And this idea of changing from need to want is the largest
Biggest.
paradigm
Yeah.
that we've
But we
experienced.
lived through that. We were the manipulated people terribly manipulated in especially in the 80s to buy. That comment when you said that, somebody told me that she did not think it was that capitalism was so bad, but what the inherent problem with capitalism, which she said spurs creativity, was credit. It was interesting. I wasn't 100% in agreement, but it was an interesting thought process. And I understood where she got that. She thought, well, human beings have a reason to spur their creativity if they think that they're going to get something from it. But credit, I haven't really fleshed it all out with her yet. But it was interesting. She's been a
Yeah.
guest on our show. Kelly from Humboldt, Kelly Lincoln from Humboldt,
Where's she
Cal.
from?
She's from Humboldt, and she does the show Facing the Apocalypse
You know
on.
that I was an undergraduate with Humboldt,
Oh,
right?
really? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Interesting show if I had Kelly on with you. But she should have you as a guest on her public radio show. It would be
Okay.
I'll hook you up. I'm good at this too.
I, I I actually think I know her show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do actually know her show. Um, but yeah, on this consumerism thing though, the idea was not that credit spurs creativity, but that credit drives entrepreneurship, right? Because
Which is what she
all
was
I need
saying. Yeah.
all I need to do is find some piece of crap and find a way of marketing that crap that inspires desire, and then I'm going to have people buying that crap on credit,
Yeah.
right? So I mean that is really what the apocalypse is about right now in capitalism, is this huge credit, like we will just, and that's the Ponzi scheme of credit is what we are living through. And I mean, we keep thinking collapse is going to happen, right? Like Michael Rupert was convinced that the 2009, financial crisis,
Yeah.
that was
That
the
was
end
it.
of it, right? Because he saw sort of this Ponzi scheme of credit building, and then the collapse of Lehman
That's
Brothers and all these
right.
other,
That's
right? So that
right.
would be it, right? And so now we're in this period of time that dwarfs all other periods of time in history as far as the sort of place we push this Ponzi scheme to, and we keep denying and denying, and so when collapse comes, it's going to be harder than it ever could have been before, right? And inescapably difficult, and it could happen any day, just like it did in 2008, in the middle of the presidential election. It could really literally happen every day, that the housing crisis from China and the uh, all the other places around the world that are relying on credit, this sort of fictional shadow banking, they're just all come due. People, China starts asking for their bonds, calling their bonds that they've been
Okay.
buying American
All right.
currency, propping up our currency. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think that we're in for a big shock, not only environmentally, but in every way conceivable. And this shock is coming sooner than rather than later. Collapse is going to be something when it happens that is completely unexpected and unrecognizable, compared to what we think we're preparing ourselves for mentally.
So, in other words, governments don't even see.
I
They're
Yeah, well,
perpetuating it. They're perpetuating it by the constant war machine. I mean, that's
well,
another
yeah. I
hideous
mean, they
issue.
have to, right? I mean, if you don't sell growth, you are just doomed. If you can't grow, like cancer, you're admitting you're doomed, and so you have to push growth now. That's the only solution, the only path forward, right?
That's what I was
I mean,
saying. They're
there's
pushing
two paths
growth.
forward. Yeah, there's growth and collapse, right? These are the
Yeah,
two.
and sustainability and all these new things and
Yeah.
the technologies and the techno utopians and wanting to develop all these things. But I'm like you. I see a big picture of it's not going to work. But yet, like you, there are things that you do that I do locally that are from the heart for others. Why
Yeah,
don't you
yeah.
tell us what you do?
Well, I just think it's really important to be of service, to find anything at
Yes.
all that is important to you, and do it. So, yeah. So for the last few years, I've been involved with Planned Parenthood here locally, and specifically, we have a book sale. So our community donates books, to us, and we have a sale that lasts about 11 days every September.
Yeah.
And last year, we made over $500,000 for our local Planned Parenthood just on
Oh, that's
selling books that
great.
were just this massive book sale. And there was, it turned out there was one other Planned Parenthood book sale in the country. It was in Iowa. And because of the political situation in there, they more or less got shut down because the people who were in their leadership started telling them that they weren't allowed to sell certain books like Little Black Sambo and things
Again,
like
again, this it's just going to
that.
proliferate, this book
So,
thing.
so what we did here at our sale in reaction to what happened to Iowa is we made a special section of our sale called banned books, and we like
Oh,
advertised,
that's great. Yeah,
that all of these books are banned books, and we're selling them, right? So,
that's
so
great.
yeah, our sale. I mean, it's really what an organization. Planned Parenthood, at least here locally. I don't know every chapter in the country, but it's a brilliant organization with a brilliant mission. Supporting health and women's
Mhm.
reproductive rights for everybody, but also gender, all matters relating to gender and all healthcare. On an as needed basis, pretty
Right,
much for
they don't
anybody.
turn anybody away. If a
Right.
woman does not have access to regular gynecological visits, Planned
It's
Parenthood
right there.
provides it. I started
So
going to Planned Parenthood way back in high school, and I was grateful, and so were all my friends.
Yeah, if anybody ever wants to check that out, we do. You can check out the website. I built the website for the local Planned Parenthood book
Oh,
sale.
that's awesome.
It is book sale period PP Central Coast, um, ppcentralcoast.org. So
All
it's
right,
book
I'll
sale
get that in the
period
links.
Central Coast period org. And before that, I worked for Wildlife Care Network as a volunteer, and I did some rescue of our local pelicans one year. And I was actually a docent at our zoo for the elephants for a couple of years. And, more or less just always trying to find ways to be helpful in a direct local manner as I can. I mean, I'm always glad to donate if I have a little bit. Um, I like
They
the
do.
comment that Sam
He's
said.
he's
Yeah,
right though.
creating a
They do
section.
it. Yes.
Yeah, Sam. Okay, all the men in chat, just so you know, you can go to
That's
Central.
right. That's right.
Um, so, it is. I just think it's important to be of service, and I don't care what you do, whether I agree with the idea or not. I just think it's important part of life. Honestly, is
Mhm.
to find a way of being of service. So, and also I have more time because I'm retired, and it helps keep me out of trouble because I do have this nasty habit of getting in trouble. Um,
Really, Elliot. Do tell. Are you a bad boy?
well, like the thing
Yeah,
I wrote
I
to,
know.
the Community Environmental Council, right?
Sure.
That kind of trouble, right?
Yeah, but that's good trouble, actually.
Yeah, I
I
guess.
mean, we need people. We need the little agitators to make any kind of difference and change sometimes. I mean, when then we have the big agitators like Roger Hallam, who I'm trying to get an
Yeah.
interview with.
Well,
Yeah,
well, Roger's idea that we need revolution, of course, he's correct, right? But it's one of these ain't gonna happens. I mean, he is
yeah,
100% correct that short of revolution, there is absolutely no saving anything.
right,
And how long has he been putting out that message, and how far has he come? And it must be
right.
extraordinarily frustrating.
Well, it is,
Mhm.
and we're gonna. I hope we're just date playing right now, but I'm very attracted to that kind of activism. It's something that's been in me for a long time, and while I cannot participate like I used to due to disabilities and the fact that I have my own little cat rescue here and it's food season and all, there's things going on in my community too that I like to get involved with our it's environmental organization. Right now, we want to keep the toxic sludge off the roads in the winter. And that's big in a farming community, things like that.
Oh, absolutely. I remember that when I lived in Ohio, that the salts
Hmm.
and stuff they put down on the roads and what that does to
Yeah,
as it leaches into the
that's
streams,
right. We
the
we did get it changed. We got one thing changed where they weren't bringing in the brine anymore, the fracking brine, which was free and easy, but not anymore because we proved the radiation was it was coming out into it's leaching out. Nobody wants to eat radiated food. So anybody out there, I tell you all the time, just like Elliot, just like me, do something. It's so rewarding also, facing the biggest issues of our entire lives. But if you do something to help others, even if it's protesting against Cop City
Columbia.
in Atlanta, so
Oh,
that they don't take down the 85 acres to build this gigantic police training organization to militarize our police against us even more. There's always things to do. And of course online communities, and as long as that lasts.
yeah, and it's interesting. It's like protesting against new solar and new wind. I mean, I am, the green movement is so destructive ecologically, and I'm so in favor and support those people who are out there in the front lines, trying to block new solar and wind projects.
Well, the
And of
big
course,
ones like that are crazy.
yeah, and the pictures now of these huge solar farms that are getting destroyed by hail. I don't know if you've seen those pictures.
Yeah, of course I've seen them.
you know,
And I've
and
discussed this with Max Wilbert because he's a measured, smart guy. We realize solar farms are not the way, and if something was ever going to be done, energy should have been nationalized, and everybody's homes, despite the mining problem, should have been equipped with solar or whatever, and not these corporate land grabs.
yeah. So, there's whatever people are interested in. I just think it's good for your mental health. But I also
Absolutely.
I also think that if we sort of focus on the point here, which is preserving as much of this planet as we can for whatever comes after humans, right? Right? What are you doing? What you're doing is going to kill humans faster. Well, okay, so I am don't want new energy sources, and so this growth, this so-called infinite growth paradigm is going to collapse because I don't want solar and wind, and other new energies. It's like, yeah, I am sort of pro collapse. I mean, I am definitely pro collapse, and the faster we collapse, the more of the planet will be preserved for whatever comes after us. I mean, collapse is different than extinction,
That's
right? I mean, there are some people who are saying the whole human should
right.
go extinct.
That's
I don't have an opinion on that one way or the other. That's but certainly collapse of civilization is coming one way or another, right? And the less we grow before that collapse, the more of the planet will be preserved for whatever comes after us.
I got a question. Thomas has a question then, and that pertains to this. Let me find it. Thomas asks, where are you, Thomas? I had it. Here it is. What do you think the ultimate fate of the human species will be?
Well, I mean, extinction, obviously, but there's the sort of typical 2080 rule, which is sort of by definition, we are somewhere between 20% and 80% of the natural lifespan of our species through extinction, right? We're not in the first 20%, we're not in the last 20. So,
Okay.
so you can kind of extrapolate from that to say if humans have been around from 2 million years, right? Then the longest will be around is 10 million years, right? So,
Right.
I mean, that's sort of the confidence interval that we have for humanity. As far as global and industrial civilization, it's done by the year 2100, no question about that. Probably much sooner than that. But human extinction is an entirely different question, and
I agree.
I mean,
I get a lot of questions. People will ask, well, when do you think it'll happen? And I always, my standard answer is, we don't have a crystal ball. Even the scientists don't prognosticate quite like that. I am never going to give that answer because I don't
Well,
have the qualifications to give anything. What you just said makes sense. You gave parameters, but you're also a professor, you're a mathematician, you're a scientist, you're a statistician, you understand. And I'm not, I mean, yes, I did a lot of statistics in my life, but I'm not qualified to say something like that.
let me give a different possible answer to yours. So when people ask when is it going to happen, my standard response is, well, it depends on where you live, and in
Okay.
certain places, if you live there, it's already happening, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. You're right.
so the parts of Africa, are in the midst of drought and famine, and are getting unsurvivable heat already. So there, if you happen to live in Lytton when it burned down after 122 degrees, days a few years back, or
Yes.
there's or in Maui. I mean, there's things are getting destroyed faster than they can get rebuilt, and that is just going to accelerate, right? So we are already at a point where infrastructure, the floods that they just had in China, right,
China.
the southern part,
Tragic.
and
Hmm.
and in Iraq, and in um,
Dubai.
yeah, Dubai, yeah.
Hmm.
So you know, infrastructure is getting destroyed faster than it can be rebuilt, and it cannot be rebuilt to the same standards it was built in the first place because things are accelerating, right? The power and ferocity of the weather. You have to plan for future stronger weather, so you have to rebuild even at a
Even,
higher
yeah.
level. And we just don't have the manpower or the finances or the willpower to rebuild when things are getting destroyed, right, left, and sideways. So
And where is all that destruction going? Where is all the rubble and all, I mean, even from the wars, where is it going, Elliot?
it's going everywhere. I mean, it's everywhere, right? So
Yeah, it that I think about that all the time. Every time I see Mariupol or I see Gaza or I see, the destruction in these cities, I think, where's all the rubble going to go? Where's it going? What kind of rebuilding? It's insanity.
yeah, I
So
mean,
you so
essentially the entire all of Palestine is like that right now, right?
Yep, the
So
whole
I mean,
Gaza
it's
Strip.
all
So
large parts of Ukraine are like that right now. So I
yes.
mean, what are you going to do? I mean, it's not going to get rebuilt before civilization collapses. It's just
W-
done.
And then where do the people go
Well,
who
immigrants,
are
right?
left?
Like my meme, right? The
Yeah,
immigrants.
yeah. But in the United States, we're more likely to take the blue-eyed Ukrainians before we're going to accept Palestinians.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because our country has gone that way, we don't
Yes.
see the value of every ethnic culture that might bring us a lot. We don't see it.
Yes.
We don't see it. All right, let's see here. All right, Nadia. Hi, Nadia. When will deaths from heat stress and famine and malaria, etc., start overwhelming the birth rate so global population starts declining? 2030? This August? Ooh.
I think that's an excellent question, and I actually have an over under for that.
Okay. Nadia is one of our extremely
I
bright.
know Nadia
Yeah.
actually,
Okay. All
a
right.
brilliant woman. She's a
Yes.
brilliant one. And I think that my over under was, and I may need to revise it, was 8 billion humans by the end of 2025. And I made this 3 or 4 years ago,
All right.
right? So in other words, the idea is there's a 50-50 chance of having either more or less than 8 billion humans by the end of
50-50.
2025. And that date was chosen specifically because of course, our friend GM, whose name I shall not mention. Um, he always said that humanity would be extinct by December 31st, 2025, right? Um, yeah.
I thought it was 2026.
He said by 2026.
Ay, ay, ay.
He
Okay.
never said in 26 or by the end of it. He said
Yeah.
by
That's
2026.
one thing I will not do. The year game.
So any rate, yeah. So in reaction to that, I gave, I do these fake wagers, right? And my fake wager was even money over under on 8 billion humans by the end of 2025. And you never know with H5N1, the under
That's
might
coming
start
up
looking
now.
promising right about now.
That's a scary one. Well, of course, we're scared of it, but we know it's going to happen. Boy. All right, let's see. Y'all ready for more interaction, guys? Latino, he's going back to the discussion on capitalism would have collapsed a long time ago without the normalization of credit.
Absolutely. I could not possibly disagree with that.
No, he's wonderful too. All our followers are great. And a lot of people came over from the other channel, The Letter Hack, who you don't know, I don't think, but I do a Wednesday night show with progressives. And it's not, I take my vacation from the Doomosphere and we talk about a lot of interesting things. So Latinos from there. Oh, thank you, Jason. Thank you. 99 cents. Hey, baby, every little thing helps to keep this thing going. All right, let's go back to Mia Bandit. How much warming is left if all aerosols disappeared instantly? Termination shock is not precise enough.
So, I mean, interesting question, but you could not get around all aerosols without also ceasing fossil fuel use, right? Which would instantly collapse civilization. So, the question of what would happen to temperature should we do away with fossil fuels is really a question of what's going to happen to temperature after civilization collapses. And, it's the same question. So, essentially civilization will not exist when that happens would be the answer to that. And but this is one of the biggest questions in sort of climate science, the biggest unknowns, right? And Hansen has recently been arguing that this number is much larger than, and the IPCC, right, for their credit, they put the bullseye at 0.5 C with an error bar from 0.1 C to 0.9 C, right? So they're saying we think about a half a degree Celsius from aerosols in terms of global, moderation of temperatures, reduction in temperatures from aerosol, but we really have no idea. It could be anywhere from almost no impact to almost a full degree. And, that's just guesswork. And it's fully possible that it's even, quite a bit more than a degree Celsius. So that, as we continue to clean up our aerosols, we'll just get hotter and hotter, faster and faster. And so this will be a gradual process. The more we eliminate sulfates from our shipping fuels, or we put on cleansers on top of smokestacks, industrial smokestacks to get rid of the aerosols, or we clean up gasoline fuels, or whatever the processes are that are producing these aerosols. The more we do that, the more we'll learn about that impact. And there was recently a satellite that was just put up in air, and just in the last week or two, that's supposedly going to get information that's going to give a much more precise answer to that. But that is $1 million question, or an $8 billion, an
Yeah.
8 billion human question, right?
Well,
That would
yeah,
be the way
all
to
these
say.
unintended consequences of everything we've done, basically it can be boiled down to a few aerosols. It really
Yeah.
can.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, these are all very good. Um, Wanda, astrologer, climate witness. Mr. Jacobson, I agree we need collapse, but what about nuclear plants? As they get hit with droughts and etc., won't they have issues, especially with spent fuel rods? Excellent question.
So, I mean, if you want to design a way to have the entire planet go sterile and dead, and you want to think of something that is a possible mechanism for that to happen, there are many possible mechanisms. Of course, a good virus could do that to us, right?
Oof.
AI could do that to us. There's lots of possible ways, and out of all of those possible ways, there's only one person I know who has ever sort of speculated and pushed and advocated for this global collapse of multiple nuclear power plants, sort of all at the same time. I think what will happen is there will be, a few more of these things with time,
Oh.
but we're likely to see, if just like we've had three now, we've had Fukushima, 3 Mile Island, and Chernobyl, right?
Mm-hmm.
And collapse is coming sooner rather than later. Um, there will be some radiation, but there will be some more of these things. But I don't foresee the kind of obliteration of all life on Earth that some like to speculate on this.
Okay.
And it's just, to me, it's not in the sort of soup of collapsed futures that I deal with as in terms of probabilities. It's just, it does not rise
Okay.
above 45 other things that could happen.
All
That'll
right.
be
And like Singing Way said, if it's still here, she was talking about, well, we need competent here, is it here? Well, we needed people that know how to shut them down safely also and be ready. She had another comment, and it humans naturally are cooperative, social, compassionate, and helpful. The system we allowed to arise and what puts the psychopaths in charge.
See, I don't know about that. I mean, there are some people who think that that's true. I think one of the interesting things to think about in terms of indigenous cultures, which is what that is really referencing,
All right.
um, is that indigenous cultures, right, that maintain some sort of balance with nature, right, for thousands of years,
Mm-hmm.
is kind of I mean, what kept indigenous cultures from having huge spikes in their populations? Why didn't they grow like cancerous, like we did, right? What kept them from that? And that is a really key question, because they certainly didn't have birth control, right? They certainly didn't have a recognition that it was important to have fewer children. Like, let's not have children. So what kept them from doing essentially what we're
Exploding.
doing? It wasn't that they didn't have capitalism. It's that what they did have was exposure to disease and famine and drought and the elements from nature and other warring tribes, right? What they did have was lifespans that, instead of our lifespans that are typically, 70s to 80s, right? They had lifespans that were 30s to 40s.
Very,
So
very hard,
hard,
difficult
short
lives.
lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, that is, maybe they were nicer, more compassionate, better on the planet, but in return their lives were extraordinarily difficult and challenged, and they were dealing face to face with predators wanting to eat them, and with all the other things that we don't have to deal with,
Nobody looks at that.
because we have oil
Yeah.
that has allowed us to live longer,
Yep.
right?
And nobody
So
really does address it like you just did, actually.
no, you don't hear that point made. So
No.
my claim is that if you were to give indigenous cultures all of the benefits of modern civilization that we have, including longer lifespans,
Mm-hmm.
and you would it'd be a hard argument to make that they would somehow control their growth, you know
Okay.
any better than we have.
It was the environment.
It
Really.
was everything
It was
about,
their
yeah.
environment, it was the life in the environment. Nadia, another question who's always good. Is the Clathrate gun going off yet?
Well, it's not yet.
How soon will it, if it isn't already? Reputedly, the LabTev-C and ESAS are seriously bubbling already and have been for a
They've
while.
been bubbling for a while,
Blah, blah,
so
blah, blah. I have bubble. I have the bubble sound.
that's a good bubble.
I
You
gotta
know, I
find
have my
it.
beverage. I could do my bubble sound directly.
Oh
I'm not too
shit! Do
good.
your bubble sound. I'm trying to look for mine. If you don't have humor in this show, we have nothing. We have to. I have the
So,
jip
I
sound.
mean, the way you, and I'm sure Nadia knows
Yeah.
this because she knows these things, but
Yeah.
the way you measure this with isotope studies, right? So there are different carbon isotopes that are sort of arise from industrial methane and anthropogenic methane versus methane that's produced by termites, that's compared to methane that comes out from these clathrates and the Siberian Arctic Sea,
Ooh.
and there simply is not a significant amount of that yet. It's not even
Right.
rising to the level that we have to say, oh, this is already happening now, the methane bomb. Now, that's not to say it's not going to go off, or that this is not an impending situation, but I
Right.
think that the thing to look at is when we really start heating up the Arctic to the point that we have a blue ocean event, and we start getting this massive, year-round heating up there. That's the time when we're going to start bubbling this stuff out like crazy. And depending on who you listen to, My personal over under, and I did this a few years ago, is 2043 for a blue ocean event. So that's the 50% later than that, 50% earlier than that. There are people who say it could happen this year, or there was a recent study that said it's going to happen by 2030, and it's sort of a crazy, time span to think that it could happen that soon. But I pay really close attention to Arctic sea ice extent, because once that goes, right, once we get to that blue ocean event, there are going to be some really
Big
dramatic changes.
changes. And we have
Quick,
been watching this on this channel, particularly, especially Jennifer and I, for years. So we
right?
do report on everything that happens up there in this. And even last week, our show, that the carbon sinks have now become carbon
So
sources, but not a lot. I put the qualification of, you know, small because they're not to the point where they're so big that it's unmanageable yet.
yeah, I mean that's happening in large parts of the Amazon. It's flipping in the boreal forest. It's flipping, but I mean once so right now, I believe as of yesterday, the latest ice measurement that comes out of
Hmm.
Japan, where the Arctic is the 11th lowest it's been on this date historically since they've been keeping measurements.
All
So
right.
it's not even in the ballpark of a blue ocean event. But
No,
you
not
know,
this year. Mm-mm.
well, the peak doesn't
Good.
happen until September, so I just have this sort of weird feeling that it's going to get really crazy up there this year, kind of the way the Antarctic got crazy last year midsummer. So I'm really paying attention to the Arctic this year. I do think
Good.
that's an important question, and yeah, methane will quickly follow. That's the best way I could say it.
And so will all the icebreakers from Russia because he's chomping at the bit for the greening of the Arctic.
Yeah.
I read about that a lot. These people that think the greening of the Arctic is another big economic opportunity and it's just going to make life so much better and it's all good because CO2, the plants love it and the greening is great. La da 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 da. Okay, sure.
How about one last question, and then I'm gonna
All
head
right.
out.
All right, let's get the yeah, we lose track of time when it's so fascinating, the conversation. All right, guys, give us one last amazing question I can find that
I want to before you do. I just want to say one more thing about the nuclear thing.
okay.
If you go to my website, again, it's climatecasino.net, and you look up like all the posts I've ever made. I have a post up there, the top 40 consequences of climate change, and another post where I list 78 consequences of climate change.
All right.
I do not believe I include nuclear plants melting down in the top 40 consequences of climate
Wow.
change. Um, so,
Interesting.
so for those out there who think this is like a primary issue, and I'm not going to try and tell you you're 100% wrong, look at those 40 that I put up there that are above it, right? That come before it, and think about what the world would be like if those things happen, right? Because
Yeah,
I mean, there are
you're
so
right.
many things that are going to happen that sort
It's
of dwarf
a
the
concurrent clusterfuck.
yeah, right, the meta crisis, right, as
Yeah,
they
it's the
call
meta crisis. You just said it nicer. All right, we're going to take Trulia's question. One last. Are we paying similar attention to the AMOC?
it. Yeah, yes, and very, very, very close attention to that. And the thing with that is if you really read like deep down into the papers about the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, right, about the inevitable collapse of that, this recent paper that came out, essentially what they did not say how much fresh water from Greenland melt that you needed to sort of make this tipping point. All they
Okay.
said was there was a point with meltwater at which it will tip. They
Okay.
couldn't identify it, but the ballpark is about 10x the melt rate of the current melt rate. So if you take the current melt rate of Greenland and that becomes 10x what it is right now, which it will eventually, right? That's really the moment at which we need to start being very concerned. Now, the other thing is that that is not an instantaneous event, right?
Mm-hmm.
A tipping point just means that you cannot prevent the consequences. Like when we say 1.5 C and Antarctic tips, all it means is that we are not going to be able to stop, the sea level rise and the melt of West Antarctic. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
And
And that's what Jim says, Jim Massa,
right. So I
the
think it's really
oceanographer.
important, especially with the AMOC, to understand that this is not a yearly or even a decadal event, right? This is really like when this thing
All right.
tips, which it will, we're talking about a span of another 100 years, 50 to 100 years for the full impact of that.
Wow.
And that full impact will be so devastating to Europe, right?
Yes.
Not that we're looking at parts of Europe that will be 10 to 15 Celsius colder than they are now, which essentially is ice age, right? Is completely almost puts them, at the northern part of into the Arctic Circle, essentially, in Siberian weather. So
Wild.
that is an eventuality, but it's so many things are going to collapse before we see
Like you
that. That is
said, you have the hierarchy.
right. That is not really something that I would put, as a near term
Right.
sort of event.
You'd bet on your hierarchy.
Yeah.
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 All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much. We are, oh, well, I have to put this up. Tim Bob. Wait, whoa, wrong one. What? Okay. Where's the tipping point with copium? Thank you, Tim. I don't know if there's a tipping point with copium. We all have to. There you go. Thank you, Eliot. It's been
Thank you.
my pleasure to have you. I've enjoyed it, guys. Thank you for coming. We will, as we always, we have an outro, and thank you.
Thank you.
It's been great. All right, guys, here we go.